I was there for 2 years.
For the first time in around a decade, BBC News has been allowed into the country. We've been shown how one of the poorest countries in the world has improved the health of its women and children.
As a small country with limited resources, that's where our priorities have gone.
But we've got minders with us all the time to make sure we don't ask difficult questions. Will we get a glimpse of what life is really like inside Eritrea and why so many young Eritreans will risk everything to leave the country? Asmara, the capital of Eritrea, a former Italian colony in the Horn of Africa. It gained its independence in 1993 after a bloody 30-year war with Ethiopia. Today, though the city retains some of the elegance of its heyday in the 1930s, with its modernist buildings and broad boulevards, it's now an isolated country with a dismal record of human rights abuses, and it's been described as the North Korea of Africa. BBC News has not been allowed into the country for around 10 years. Until now. We're here to report on Eritrea's healthcare system, and everywhere we go, we'll be accompanied by this team of doctors and a government minder. We arrived in the early hours of the morning and we're just on our way to a health centre where we're meeting some social workers. We've had a bit of a briefing from the Ministry of Health. About a half-hour drive outside the capital is the Mbado Health Clinic. When we arrive, our minder begins to make notes of who we speak to and what they say. We're being shown how Eritrea has met 3 of its Millennium Development Goals, targets set 15 years ago by the UN for all developing countries.
Plan is 98%, actually 100%.
So it's doing very well.
2014.
The UN says Eritrea has improved its maternal health, lowered child mortality, and reduced diseases like HIV/AIDS and malaria. We're taken on a carefully planned tour of the best in Eritrean healthcare, starting at this clinic. Hello. Which sends out social workers to advise new mothers in their own homes. Today, the social workers are back at base having a catch-up meeting, and we're given a very special welcome.
عديدات متنا حصانات متنا اتم معلتن دي تودق كمان ينصلن نيرو እዚ ሕክምና ዝምስ መጸገም ጽቡቅ ኢና ኸይድና ምንታይ ሲ ኩሉ ጸገምና ተኻይድልና.
And this doesn't just save their lives, because while they're in hospital, mothers can be given health information, and the UN says the country is now polio-free and measles has almost been eradicated.
ኣብ ሕክምና እንዳኸዳ ከበዴታት ሞት ዲሕና ቆልዑን ኣፍልጦ ኮይኑ ኣብ ክትሳበት ገለ እንዳኸዱ ካብ ልፍዮ ገለ ሞማት ምዕባለ ብዙሕ ኢና ሪና ናይ ብሓቂ.
Are you satisfied with where your country is now?
نحن دوغن نحن نبلو نحن نحيش كل كبابينا يبلانه.
Though the minders are listening nearby, these health workers do seem genuinely patriotic.
ምንታይ ሲ ምዩቕ እንዳልና ኣብዚ ነይሮምና ከምኡ ደፍርሑና مسكدنا خاو خاني كنمص خلنا خا ابي حديرن طنشن حدا غزي طنشنا نمص كابي طنشكنو قالاس وي تكوس اندي تعليمه مصيبزي منشو ابزي بلزا تكوشي.
What do you think of people Eritreans who leave and don't stay to protect their country?
عدهم كفلوا اي تركبني هاجرنا صباحنا قومتوي يبلان ناص اخذكم يا صباحنا حجي انبر.
This kind of patriotism is common amongst the older generation who fought so hard for their independence. Eritrea was liberated 24 years ago after a bitter war against Ethiopia, its larger and better armed southern neighbour.
It might look like a disordered ragtag army, but it's not. And the Eritreans are almost completely self-sufficient in everything except weapons, ammunition and petrol.
The leader of the struggle for independence, Isaias Afwerki, has been Eritrea's only president. No general election has ever been held. Those who dissent have been jailed. And there's no free press in the country. We came across this surreal war memorial on the edge of town. This country is not even a quarter of a century old, and these tanks are a reminder of 30 years of battle and the struggle for independence from Ethiopia. But it's not just old tanks and jeeps we see. Human rights organisations say it's in prisons made from shipping containers like these that critics of the regime are still held without charge or trial, and sometimes tortured. This former soldier told us that's what happened to him. Though he's now safely out of the country, he still has family in Eritrea and believes they'd be in danger if he spoke openly. He still doesn't know why he was arrested, and he was never charged or tried for any crime.
I was kept deep underground for a month. I was in total darkness. I could hear other people, and some were very sick, but I couldn't see them or talk to them. We had to relieve ourselves in the dark near where we sat. It was really horrible. I was only brought out during that time to be beaten and then taken back under. After a month, I was put in a shipping container with 10 other men. There was no room to lie down without overlapping. I was there for 2 years. I didn't know what I had done or how long they would keep me, and no one knew I was there.
We're interested in these containers because of what we'd heard, but our minders are getting uneasy, and they don't realise we're still recording. And what about all these shipping containers?
If you find it like this one, then you would use it.
Use it, operating theatre. Yeah. Wow, so you used a lot of these for operating theatres as well?
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, yeah.
But maybe some of them were...
The minders are clearly trying to divert our attention away from the shipping containers.
Train.
Old train, yeah. As the days have gone by, our entourage and the minders have become very relaxed and friendly around us. But there is this sense that there is only so much you can talk to them about. There is only so many questions you can ask before they start to feel quite uncomfortable. Hello, Mr. Yamani, nice to see you. Yamani Gebreb is a friend of the president and his political advisor.
We don't have secret prisons. There are prisons in this country. There have been allegations, wild allegations of tens of thousands of political prisoners in this country. Again, all of them wrong and baseless. We have had people in detention, starting from the war that we have had in Ethiopia.
So no secret prisons, no places of detention and torture?
No, there are places of detention, as I said. On torture, we're against torture.
What do you think of the accusations of human rights abuses and lack of freedom of expression and freedom of speech in this country?
Are there human rights issues in Eritrea? Of course there are. There are human rights issues in all countries in the world. But this is a country that is committed to human rights, and I think our human rights record is a fairly good one.
The UN official assigned to investigate claims that arbitrary imprisonment, torture and human rights abuses are widespread has not been allowed into the country. Our minders are keen for us to continue our tour of the country's hospitals and clinics. We're taken on a nerve-wracking 4-hour drive down hairpin bends to the Red Sea coast. In a small clinic just outside the seaside town of Massawa, we're shown why HIV rates in Eritrea are about 1/10 the regional average.
She's giving advice, counseling,
What is she telling her?
She's causing, now I will do for you HIV test, she's saying.
And every pregnant woman is automatically tested.
We will wait for 5 to 10 minutes.
To find out the result?
To find the result, yeah.
So today we'll find out?
Now.
And they're also doing well in malaria prevention. The UN says for every 1 case in Eritrea, there are on average 13 cases in neighbouring countries. Eritrea is one of the poorest countries in the world. The average income is said to be less than $600 a year.
Hello.
Yet, according to the UN, the government has managed to noticeably improve the health of its people. But how has it managed to pay for this?
I think it's just a question of priorities. As a small country with limited resources, we believe we can survive, thrive, compete in this difficult neighborhood only if we can build our human resources, and so that's where our priorities have gone.
Is she severe?
Yeah, severe malnutrition. Because she was repeatedly sick.
So what will you give her now?
A nut, peanut. She will continue peanut now.
She's been taking peanut.
Yeah.
Hi, Christine. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming down. Despite condemning Eritrea for its human rights record, the UN has praised its healthcare successes.
In many other African countries, HIV is on the high rise, maternal health and child health. So when we compare, we see that this is a very big achievement. We really commend the work of the people of Eritrea.
And the UN says the lack of corruption around health funding has helped the country reach its millennium targets.
And we've seen the value for money and accountability. You know, you invest little and you get quite a lot. That capacity to use the few resources they have for good use. I don't know, maybe this they learned from the many years of war to be able to produce so much from so little.
The government says it's also the experience of war which has created a spirit of self-sufficiency and the importance of working together for the greater good of the nation. All over the country we've seen this terracing. It's all man-made. Somebody has put these rocks here. And they've done it to stop soil erosion, for water conservation and agriculture. Every year, students as young as 15 come here to these plains and they take a month out of their school holidays to do this. But they don't have a choice. At 18, everyone in the country begins conscription, starting with training at the military academy. This is graduation day, and these people will soon begin national service. They will be assigned military or civilian jobs, which could mean becoming a waiter, a teacher, or even a doctor. They could be working for years on end for little or no pay. National service should last 18 months, but human rights organisations say it could last a person's whole working life. As we walk with our minders, we come across young men in fatigues building a house. So what exactly are they doing here?
One guy is building a house. So he invited all the villagers. So these are all volunteers working together to build this house.
So they're volunteering?
They volunteer.
And lunch is provided and that sort of
he
thing.
provides lunch and he provides drinks. So this is the most difficult part, to lay the foundation.
Yes.
So he invites everybody. He will not take them. So, shall we move now?
As always, our minder is taking a keen interest in who we talk to and what they say. So we can't ask these men if they are volunteers or actually doing national service. We've been told that national service can mean forced labour in civilian jobs like construction and agriculture.
As part of my national service, I was working in fields belonging to military officers and working for their personal profit, not for the good of the country. I did national service from 1997 to 2007.
So it took for 10 years.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be for 18 months.
No. If it was 18 months, why would so many people leave the country, or drown in the sea, or die in the Sahara trying to get out? I am patriotic, and I was happy to work for 18 months, even 3 or 4 or 5 years, but not for the rest of my life.
The government admits that conscription can be indefinite, but says this is because of the ongoing dispute with Ethiopia.
But people have been doing national service for extended periods of time. Again, that's because of the war. So to defend ourselves, we have to depend on our people. That means young people have been compelled to be in national service for longer periods of time, and it's difficult for them.
It must be more than difficult because many young people are putting their lives at risk to get away from it. The UN estimates up to 4,000 Eritreans flee every month. Eritrea has the longest section of coastline along the Red Sea, and they would say the safest. But just over there is Yemen, and every year thousands of young Eritreans make their way across the water in what's often been described as one of the most dangerous journeys. They face people traffickers who buy and sell asylum seekers for profit. Some try and cross the land border into Sudan and end up in refugee camps. Most are aiming for Europe, and to get there they have to get across the Mediterranean Sea. In fact, the number of Eritreans arriving by boat and seeking asylum in Europe is second only to those from Syria. The Eritrean government blames European migration policies for encouraging people to leave.
The word is out that if somehow you manage to reach the Mediterranean Sea, you'll be granted European citizenship or the citizenship of an European country in a very short time.
And Eritreans seeking asylum do have a good chance of being allowed to stay if they make it to Europe. Some countries say yes to 100% of the Eritrean applications they get. Even the UK allowed in nearly 90% of the Eritreans who asked to stay. The man we spoke to says he left Eritrea because he'd escaped from prison and was afraid he would be killed if he was caught, not for European citizenship.
I'm telling you the truth. Why would I leave? I would rather be in my country where I have family and friends. And I risked my life. Anything could have happened along the way. If I could, I would go home now.
Even those who are given asylum and settle abroad are still expected to send money back. People who do leave this country then have to send a percentage of their pay back, don't they?
No, they don't have to send a percentage of their pay back. Eritreans abroad pay a 2% rehabilitation tax. It's a tax that they pay to this country as an obligation of their citizenship. Not all Eritreans pay it. There are Eritreans who don't pay it for whatever reasons.
And then can they come back to the country?
Yes, they can come back. Can
even if they don't pay the 2%?
Yeah, they can come back, but they cannot ask for their rights here. You know, if they need a plot of land to build a house, they cannot do it because they have not done their obligations.
We're in Mandafera, 2 hours drive from Asmara. The minders take us to a showcase hospital.
So, there's Gilda from BBC.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. We're told in this hospital, like everywhere else in Eritrea, medical care is almost free, just a small fee for treatment and drugs. But if you genuinely can't afford even that, the doctors tell us you pay nothing. We're shown a ward where pregnant women who may be at risk during childbirth stay for weeks or even months before their baby is born. And if the child is premature, they can both stay till the baby is well enough to go home. We've just come to the fistula ward. This is the main centre, so women from all over the country come here to be treated. Fistula is a serious and debilitating condition, and the operation to fix it can be complicated. If this doesn't work the first time round, what happens?
Well, I will keep her until she's cured here. We don't discharge unless they are cured.
During our time in Eritrea, we're taken to numerous clinics and hospitals because the story the government wants us to tell is of a country succeeding in improving the health of some of its most vulnerable citizens. We've had a very carefully choreographed tour of this hospital. It's a very good story. It's a very good, positive news story, but everyone we seem to be meeting are handpicked by the government officials, and our minders, they're with us at all times. On our last day in Eritrea, one of our team was able to wander around without the minder. He tried to speak to 37 people, but they all declined. Some of them said they were scared the government might be watching. Eritrea has been a one-party state since independence. Tight state control has forced through improvements in health, but the government says democracy isn't a priority. You've promised elections since '93. Why hasn't that happened?
Because of developments that took place very soon after our independence, the war that we faced with Ethiopia, and the continued conflict that we have had since then.
Don't you have faith in your people that if you held elections that they would make the right choices?
We have had regional elections. We will have national elections.
When will you have national elections?
Again, when the time comes, we'll do it. But this fixation on elections, I think is wrong, and I think it's creating problems for Africa. You know, what we're doing is, you know, we're creating excuses, you know, for governments that are completely unrepresentative of their people and their societies.
It's clear elections aren't imminent and the state is not about to loosen its grip. That's why, despite better healthcare, every month thousands of Eritreans risk their lives to leave their country.